Xtreme, them Gainz, Xtreme, shit we see, Xtreme. Want to know about corruption? Well, listen to what I see. An algorithmic money making, taking, thinking, fucking scheme. And if you let it, they'll get it. They'll gut you till you bleed. A lot of y'all get fucked by the bucket and you think it's free. Yeah, it's me, your team, Xtreme.
What's up, y'all? What's up, YouTube? What's up, Extreme Gains family? I'm Chuck, and this is Extreme Gains. I am not a financial advisor. Nothing I say is or ever will be financial advice. Please do not take it as such. Today is Sunday, Fun Day Sunday, December 18th, 2022, and this is my AMC, GME, and SPY Sunday weekly update and prep video for tomorrow and beyond. As always, I hope you all had a great end of the week in the market. More importantly, I hope you made some extreme gains for yourselves. I'm going to go over all my regulars, my snake Algo method for all three tickers, some macro comparatives, and some side-by-side projections from last Sunday's weekly update and prep video, and the fulfillment of those projections with all of last week's price action. So with all of that said, let's dig in. I hope you all are having a great weekend as well. Diving right into the charts. Currently on your screen is AMC. AMC finished the day on Friday, regular trading hours, down 5.18%, and then even Steven in after hours, ending the week trading at 531. The current intra-week snake that I have been tracking on this channel is on your screen in red. That is the day prior to the previous divergence from and completion of fulfillment of the previous intra-week snake that you see in blue here behind it. And you can see once again, all of last week, this intra-week snake continued to fulfill its projection. Here's the side-by-side from last Sunday's weekly update and prep video. The location of price action within it, the projection from it, and the continued dead-on fulfillment of it with all of last week's price action. You can see what the projection is from it moving forward into tomorrow and beyond if price action were to continue to fulfill it. This has been intact, fulfilling its projection for 6 complete weeks now. Then from a technical perspective, the same levels are still intact that I have been talking about. I talked about the breach of the 547 to downside. I'd be looking for a move down to the previous 505 critical level of support. We almost made it there on Friday, down to 515 intraday there before the bounce came in. So likewise, I'll be looking for a breach of that 547 back upside. If it were to do that, I'd be looking for the next level up to be that 681 macro W formation neckline. However, a rejection off of that 547 significant level of support, I'll be looking for a move right back down to that 503 critical level. A breach of 503, I did go ahead and go back and find the next significant and or critical level that I'll be looking at, and that will be around the 460 price range. So that is everything from that perspective on AMC. The macro comparative for AMC, as most, if not all of you know, I've been using the macro double bottom from prior to the January 2021 run-up for the entire year that I've been on the channel here. And in its most recent fulfilling position, we failed to continue that upside projection and got raked out of there off of that macro third hit, therefore continuing to follow and fulfill the intra-week snake, which I have on here to show you. We've talked about this several times here on the channel throughout the last few weeks about this macro comparative. In this position, I do believe it's still valid because this downside fulfillment that we're getting of the intra-week snake is an exact inverted replica of that upside projection that the macro comparative was giving. So in that scenario, I think it is still valid. And if it were to continue to fulfill here, there is a convergence place coming up in the future that price action could potentially converge back with the macro comparative for this second bottom up out of here. So in that way, I do think it is still valid. However, I talked about horizontally compressing this, therefore pulling this in here, and I'm just going to move it for the sake of the video here to keep it moving, and it has given the same projection as the intra-week snake here. The offset between the red run-up of the intra-week snake and the blue run-up of the macro comparative are identical when it is actually compressed horizontally. So it's just showing like that right now because all I did was shift it over from right to left. So in that way, you can see what that projection obviously would be, the same as the intra-week snake, if it were to continue to fulfill it in that manner as well, and or if that were to be the correct placement of the macro comparative versus this OG placement of it that we have been consistently fulfilling throughout the last year. So that's everything with AMC that I am looking at moving into tomorrow and beyond. Up next is GME. GME finished the day on Friday, regular trading hours, up 1.07% and then up an additional 0.48% in after hours, ending the week trading at 2090. The current intra-week snakes are on your screen. Blue is the day of divergence. Red is the day prior to the previous divergence from the previous intra-week snake. The red day prior to started off in its mirrored position like this, projecting a bounce back upside out of a double bottom formation. We failed to continue fulfilling that, so I did speak to you guys and gals in last week's Thursday update and prep video about how I work the micro intradays, and I would be working this the exact same way. It would pull it down here for a potential mirrored and nuanced projection away from the current continued projection of that day of divergence that it is fulfilling. And you can see here that that essentially is a mirrored projection from that current fulfilling snake. So you can see, likewise, all of last week, we continued to fulfill the day of divergence as it was projecting dead on as well. Here's the side-by-side from last Sunday's weekly update and prep video. The location of price action within it, the projection from it, and the continued dead on fulfillment of it as it was projecting with all of last week's price action. You can see what the projection is from it moving forward into tomorrow and beyond if price action were to continue to fulfill it. Now, from a technical perspective, again, the same levels I had previously talked in last week's update and prep videos, and even the ones prior to that about the 2170 critical level of support. I was looking for that breach of 2525. We got it. And a move down to the 2170. We got it. If it bounced back up to the 2525, we got it. A rejection back off of it, down back to the 2170. We got it. And if it were to breach and continue following the current day of divergence intra-week snake, the expectation going into last week was that rejection and release off of that and a move down here to the 1948 or 1950 price level. Just like AMC, it fulfilled, but it did not come down here to the cent. We were pretty close. GME got down to around $20 even on that release to downside before Friday afternoon's bounce back upside here. So in that way, I'd be looking at those same levels, be looking at the 2170 back to the upside, a breach of that, and I'll be looking at 2525 as the next level of resistance. However, either a rejection off of the 2170 or a failed continuation to that level and back downside, I'd be looking at that 1948 as my next critical level of support to downside. And that is everything that I am looking at with GME. Last but not least is SPY. SPY finished the day on Friday, regular trading hours, down 1.18%, again, down an additional 0.2% in after hours, ending the week trading at 382.50. The current set of 3 intra-week snakes that I have been going over here on the channel as well are on the screen here. The red one was the day prior to the previous divergence only, and in its position you can see its continued fulfillment. Now it has gotten a little more volatile and direct to the downside here, away from somewhat of a consolidative move to the downside as this one is showing. You can see where we are at within that and what the obvious projection would be from it if we were to continue to fulfill it. However, this orange in the scenario that orange is the day prior to and blue is the day of the previous divergence from that previous intra-week snake. Here was its position, and it was projecting that direct straight line move to the downside. You can see where we're at within it, the continued fulfillment of it all through last week. Here's the side-by-side from last Sunday's weekly update and prep video. The location of price action within it, the projection from it, and the continued dead-on fulfillment of it with all of last week's price action. You can see what the projection is from it moving forward into tomorrow and beyond if price action were to continue to fulfill it. Then I have the blue, which would be the day of divergence only. And in its position, likewise, it continued to fulfill throughout all of last week. Here's the side-by-side from last Sunday's weekly update and prep video. The location of price action within it, the projection from it, and the continued dead-on fulfillment of it with all of last week's price action. You can see what the projection is from it moving forward into tomorrow and beyond if price action were to continue to fulfill it. Now, regarding the intra-week snakes, just like on AMC, SPY's intra-week snakes have been fulfilling their projection for 6 entire complete weeks from initial placement to our current location. So they both could at any time divert from the continued fulfillment of their current projections if and when they were to do that prior to the expiry of them as they're clipped and placed and shown to you right now. Then you obviously know, most of you do anyways, that I would be clipping a new set of intra-week snakes at that time, and it would be deemed a divergence from the current and time for a new one, and that's where that interchange would happen to the next intra-week snake. From a technical perspective on SPY, the levels that I talked about last week worked out absolutely perfectly. I talked about the ascending level of support and that macro neckline for that top build out to downside and how the alternating significance of them would be dependent upon when this price action were to breach them. Therefore, it did over here that the ascending level of support was my indication level, the neckline was my confirmation level to downside, and that worked out absolutely perfectly. So we're back down here, currently sitting at that 383 price level. So if price action were to continue downside, the next level down that I will be looking at will be the 381.25. Below that, I'll be looking at the, if I can get it to light up for me here, 375.35. Back upside, if this were to catch a midline bounce back upside, I would be looking at the 391.92 neckline to potentially turn into resistance back upside if price action were to bounce and head back upside. So that is everything from that perspective on SPY. The macro comparative that I have been viewing on SPX from the 2008-2009 correction and crash. Oh, that's the 2000, my bad. We have talked about this extensively as well, and in its most recent fulfilling position throughout this time, I have went over in the video and talked about the only way for this to potentially continue fulfilling it in this position would be for a direct rake back downside in a volatile, violent way to potentially converge back with this for the continued fulfillment. And the starts of that have happened so far. So that's the straight up position of it. And obviously that projection from it would be obviously still intact and would remain valid from that perspective for it to continue to fulfill in that straight up position. However, I've also been tracking this in the mirrored position in the event that this macro double formation were to fall into a reversal back upside and that macro neckline were to breach back upside and that turn into that translation to that macro reversal. And in the mirrored position, you can see the continued fulfillment of it, what the position of price action is within it. and what the projection would be from it moving forward into tomorrow and beyond. My friends, my family, that is everything that I am personally looking at moving into tomorrow and beyond with AMC, GME, and SPY. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you all very much. I greatly appreciate it. Good luck in the markets tomorrow. Make some extreme gains for yourselves. I'll get an update and prep video out on Tuesday after market close, like always. Take care, enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and I'll talk to you all on the next one. Later.